On October 24, 1942, the oppressive quiet of Henderson Field, situated on the unforgiving island of Guadalcanal, was abruptly shattered. The dense jungle, which had held its breath in a deadly stillness, suddenly erupted with the most gut-wrenching sound imaginable to any American Marine. The blood-curdling screams of 800 Japanese soldiers launching their fanatical death charge under the shroud of darkness. Amidst the chaos, Gunnery Sergeant John Basilone hunkered down behind what his battle-weary troops affectionately, or perhaps ironically, dubbed museum pieces. These formidable M1917 and A1 water-cooled machine guns, veritable relics from the First World War, were cumbersome implements, each weighing a hefty 100 pounds of antiquated iron. They had ostensibly been superseded by more contemporary, lighter models like the M1919, which boasted a blistering rate of fire capable of expelling 1,000 rounds per minute. The M1919 represented everything the Marine Corps sought for the dynamic challenges of jungle warfare: speed, portability, and modern engineering. Yet, as the relentless Banzai charge crashed like a tidal wave against the American defensive perimeter, an utterly improbable event unfolded. The supposedly superior newer machine guns began to fail, their barrels glowing a menacing cherry red as their intricate mechanisms seized up under the unforgiving, humid heat of the tropical night. In stark contrast, the venerable M1917A1s, with their bulky water jackets and a more measured cyclic rate of 600 rounds per minute, continued their relentless barrage, belt after belt, hour upon hour. They fired without faltering, without succumbing to overheating, and without mercy. By the dawn's light, a staggering 800 enemy combatants lay dead, victims of the very weapons the Marines had once considered a burdensome hindrance. These purportedly outdated machine guns harbored a critical secret that the modern military had, in its pursuit of innovation, inadvertently overlooked. Stay with us and watch the end of the video to uncover more about this fascinating historical revelation. We will be grateful for your like and subscription. Please also share a comment about where you are from and what you think about the video topic. The suffocating humidity of Guadalcanal enveloped everything, clinging like a damp, oppressive shroud as Captain Roy Smith surveyed the scene from the periphery of Henderson Field. He watched his Marines grapple with their assigned weaponry, particularly the M1917A1 machine guns, which sat in their defensive emplacements like anachronistic artifacts from a bygone conflict. A grim reality, Smith reflected. Each weapon, fully loaded, exceeded 100 pounds, its massive water jacket, reflecting the tropical sun with a dull, almost weary sheen. The cooling system alone required nearly a gallon of water, adding significant bulk to an already unwieldy apparatus that seemed tailor-made for the static trench lines of Europe, not the fluid, mobile engagements of the Pacific theater. Smith's exasperation had been steadily mounting for weeks. The M1919 machine guns, by all accounts, embodied the ideal characteristics the Corps desired for jungle combat. They were significantly lighter, inherently more portable, and boasted a firing capability of up to 1,000 rounds per minute, dwarfing the M1917's steady 600. Furthermore, their air-cooled design eliminated the need for water, thereby reducing both overall weight and operational complexity. On paper, these attributes made the M1919 the quintessential weapon for rapid advances through the dense, unforgiving terrain, where every single ounce carried by a soldier was a critical consideration. Yet here they were, encumbered with firearms that rightfully belonged in a historical display. The skepticism was not confined to Captain Smith. His Marines wholeheartedly shared his reservations. Private First Class Martinez, for instance, visibly struggled to maneuver his M1917 into a suitable firing position, muttering curses under his breath as the tripod legs snagged and tangled in the pervasive undergrowth. "Sergeant, this thing weighs more than my girlfriend back home," he quipped, eliciting scattered chuckles of commiseration from his squad mates. The comparison, while humorous, was remarkably accurate. The M1917A1, complete with its tripod, water jacket, and a full load of ammunition, tipped the scales at a substantial 103 pounds, whereas the M1919 presented a svelte contrast at merely 41 pounds. However, the sheer weight of the M1917A1 represented only a fraction of its operational drawbacks. Its intricate water cooling system demanded constant, meticulous maintenance in the demanding field environment. The water jackets necessitated frequent refilling, all connections had to be diligently inspected for potential leaks, and the entire cumbersome apparatus required careful handling to prevent any damage. In stark contrast, the M19119's air cooling mechanism afforded Marines the freedom to pick up and relocate without the additional concern of sloshing water or the complexities of plumbing. While both weapons fired the same formidable 30 WWI cartridge, the M1919 performed this task with a perceived modern efficiency. Smith continued his rounds, meticulously observing his men's arduous efforts with the antiquated weapons. Despite the Corps issuing these M1917s specifically for the defense of Henderson Field, every contemporary tactical manual underscored the paramount importance of mobility and concentrated firepower. The Japanese forces, renowned for their mastery of rapid infiltration tactics, expertly utilized the jungle's dense cover to swiftly close the distance before American units could effectively react. Logically, it seemed that lighter, faster-firing weapons would undoubtedly provide his Marines with the decisive advantage they so desperately needed. The objective technical specifications painted a seemingly clear picture. The M1919 could sustain rates of fire approaching 1,000 rounds per minute during short, controlled bursts, effectively nearly doubling the M1917's consistent 600 rounds per minute. For a defensive stronghold anticipating relentless human wave attacks, this superior firepower appeared absolutely crucial. Furthermore, the M1919's air-cooled barrel was theoretically capable of handling extended firing periods, provided that the gun crews judiciously allowed for brief cooling intervals between sustained bursts. Yet a persistent, unsettling doubt gnawed at Smith's mind as he observed his gunners during their training exercises. He began to ponder that the M1917's water jacket was not merely inert, dead weight. It was, in fact, a remarkably efficient, massive heat sink, engineered to absorb and dissipate thermal energy with ruthless efficacy. The newer M1919 machine guns relied fundamentally on the circulation of air around their barrels for cooling. This system functioned adequately in more moderate climates, but it struggled significantly, almost to the point of failure, in the suffocating, pervasive humidity of the South Pacific. Under conditions of 90% humidity and temperatures soaring past 90 degrees Fahrenheit, the effectiveness of air cooling diminished drastically with every incremental degree of barrel heat generated during sustained firing. The requirements for ammunition, too, presented significant operational distinctions between the two machine gun models, while both weapons were designed to fire the identical 30-06 cartridges. Their respective feeding systems operated on fundamentally different principles. The M1917 utilized continuous ammunition belts, which could be seamlessly linked together, facilitating exceptionally sustained periods of fire. Conversely, the M1919 depended on shorter belts, necessitating more frequent and time-consuming reloading cycles. In the crucible of a prolonged engagement, those seemingly fleeting extra seconds spent changing belts could in fact prove to be tragically fatal. Smith's lingering doubts solidified into an undeniable conviction during a critical training exercise conducted just 3 days prior to the impending Japanese assault. His gunners had been diligently practicing sustained fire drills, expending belt after belt of ammunition to realistically simulate the kind of overwhelming defensive barrage they would need to unleash against a ferocious banzai charge. Initially, the M1919s performed admirably, their higher rate of fire tearing through targets with impressive velocity and precision for the first few minutes. However, as the rigorous exercise progressed, inherent problems began to emerge with alarming regularity. The air-cooled barrels of the newer guns started to glow ominously, first a dull, angry red, then intensifying to a brighter, more dangerous hue. As the metal absorbed more heat than the humid ambient air could possibly dissipate, gunners were repeatedly compelled to cease fire, enduring precious minutes as they waited for the barrels to cool sufficiently before they could resume their defensive duties. In stark contrast, the M1917s maintained their unwavering steady rate of 600 rounds per minute without a single interruption. Their robust water jackets efficiently absorbed the immense heat generated, converting it into steam that was safely vented away from the intricate firing mechanism. By the conclusion of the intensive exercise, it became glaringly apparent that the newer, supposedly superior guns had actually fired fewer total rounds, despite their inherently higher cyclic rate, forced into recurrent silences by their own overwhelming heat generation. The older, seemingly obsolete weapons, however, had maintained a consistent, unbroken stream of fire throughout the entire arduous drill, their barrels remaining cool enough to safely handle even after thousands upon thousands of rounds had passed through their chambers. Within their firing apertures, nevertheless, Captain Smith wrestled with internal doubts. While rigorous training exercises offered valuable preparation, actual combat would invariably introduce unpredictable variables and chaotic elements that no drill could ever fully replicate. The Japanese military, renowned for their aggressive nocturnal assaults, often employed human wave tactics, relying on sheer shock and overwhelming numerical superiority to breach and overrun entrenched defensive positions. Smith pondered critically, could the M1917's consistent, sustained rate of fire adequately repel hundreds of fanatical, screaming adversaries? Or would the M1917's blistering rapid bursts be indispensable for decimating attackers before they could close the perilous distance to their lines? His Marine contingent, true to their disciplined ethos, continued their operational readiness with exemplary military precision. Yet Smith, with a keen observer's eye, detected a flicker of apprehension in their gazes. While they placed unwavering faith in their exhaustive training and the reliability of their assigned weaponry, these particular machine guns, in a deeper sense, felt like anachronistic burdens, tethering them to a bygone era. Virtually every other unit deployed across the vast Pacific theater appeared to be transitioning to lighter, more technologically advanced armaments. It was only here, entrenched in the defense of this vital, isolated airstrip, that they found themselves equipped with what many perceived as relics, reminiscent of the trench warfare from the Battle of Belleau Wood. The profound irony of their situation was not lost on Smith. The very same formidable firearms that had been instrumental in securing victory during the First World War were now widely regarded as antiquated, fundamentally unsuited for the demands of contemporary combat. However, as he meticulously observed his gunners diligently mastering the intricate idiosyncrasies and formidable capabilities of the M1917, a nascent question began to form in his mind. He started to contemplate whether the Marine Corps possessed a deeper strategic insight, perhaps a wisdom that eluded immediate, superficial understanding. It was conceivable that a profound sagacity lay in selecting combat instruments based squarely on the specific exigencies of a mission, rather than merely adhering to the transient trends of technological advancement. In precisely 72 hours, when the dense jungle canopy erupted in a cacophony of primal screams and deafening gunfire, that underlying wisdom would face its ultimate, most unforgiving crucible. Stay with us and watch the end of the video. We will be grateful for your like and subscription. Write a comment about where you are from and what you think about the video topic. The ominous breath of death drifted across the tranquil Ilu River on the night of October 24th. Colonel Kyonawichiki's commanding voice, sharp and resonant, pierced the profound darkness as he delivered his final, impassioned address to his eager assault troops. The 800 men of the 28th Infantry Regiment held an unshakable conviction that the American Marines would inevitably collapse and disintegrate before the relentless might of the Emperor's steel. Ichiki's operational blueprint was characterized by its elegant simplicity. A direct, head-on assault across the exposed sandbar at the river's mouth, designed to overwhelm the thinly spread American defensive line through sheer, audacious courage and an unyielding, superior fighting spirit. The Americans, he confidently assured his assembled officers, had never before truly confronted the unbridled fury of a genuine banzai charge. Captain Smith positioned himself cautiously behind the reinforced, sand-bagged emplacement, where Gunnery Sergeant Basilone had expertly emplaced his M1917A1 heavy machine gun. Its water jacket still radiated a faint warmth from the thorough function checks conducted that afternoon. This formidable weapon commanded an impeccable field of fire, sweeping across the narrow stretch of beach where the river converged with the ocean, its sturdy tripod legs driven deeply and securely into the coral-rich sand. Basilone had dedicated countless hours to meticulously adjusting the gun's traverse and elevation, carefully marking critical reference points with white-painted stakes that shimmered with a subtle luminescence under the faint starlight. The gun's formidable ammunition belts, each containing 250 linked rounds, snaked through the position like metallic viscera, poised and ready to feed into the weapon's voracious chamber. The assault commenced precisely at 0310, with a chilling sound that sent shivers down Smith's spine. 800 voices erupting in a terrifying synchronized scream as Japanese soldiers surged across the exposed sandbar. They advanced in relentless, successive waves, bayonets rigidly fixed to their rifles, which were held aloft, their faces contorted with an almost fanatical, unwavering resolve. The initial ranks plunged through the shallow waters, while countless others pressed relentlessly behind them. A veritable human tsunami that, under the pale moonlight, appeared utterly unstoppable. Smith's M1919 gunners unleashed their initial fusillade, their weapons chattering with a furious intensity, spitting nearly 1,000 rounds per minute as they poured a torrent of lead into the charging mass. The immediate impact was utterly devastating. Bodies crumpled and fell in heaps, their blood rapidly darkening the sand as the high-velocity rounds ripped through flesh and bone with brutal efficiency. For a few precious, fleeting seconds, it seemed as though these modern armaments would unequivocally validate every tactical manual ever penned regarding the efficacy of rapid defensive fire. However, the oppressive jungle heat had been steadily accumulating within those air-cooled barrels throughout the entire day. And now the relentless, sustained firing pushed the metal temperatures far beyond their operational limits. The first M1919 abruptly fell silent after a mere 90 seconds, its barrel glowing a vivid cherry red in the darkness as the gunner frantically gestured for an urgent barrel change. Another weapon followed suit just 30 seconds later, then a third, their intricate mechanisms seizing irrevocably as thermal expansion locked their moving parts rigidly in place. Meanwhile, Basilon's M1917A1 had settled into its own relentless, unwavering rhythm, a steady 600 rounds per minute, precise as a metronome. Its robust water jacket efficiently absorbed the immense heat, converting it into steam that hissed softly and almost companionably into the cool night air. Smith observed with a profound sense of fascination as the venerable old gun maintained its rate of fire without the slightest interruption, each round meticulously placed into the designated killing zone that Basilone had so carefully demarcated during his daylight reconnaissance. Despite the horrific carnage, the Japanese forces continued their relentless advance, their ingrained training overriding all basic survival instincts as they stepped over the lifeless forms of their fallen comrades and pressed inexorably forward. Smith could now discern individual faces, their eyes wide with a terrifying battle fury, mouths agape in screams that mingled chillingly with the machine gun's unwavering, rhythmic hammering. Some attackers carried crude, explosive charges strapped to their bodies, embodying a grim willingness to perish, if only they could reach the American positions. The M1919s, though struggling, eventually sputtered back into action as their crews completed hurried, desperate barrel changes. However, their critical, interrupted fire had granted the Japanese assault crucial momentum. Soldiers from the enemy ranks now reached the outer perimeter of wire obstacles, tearing through the defensive barriers with both wire cutters and their bare, desperate hands. The intermittent gaps in the covering fire had exacted a severe toll. What should have been an impenetrable, continuous wall of lead had degenerated into sporadic bursts punctuated by critical, silence-filled intervals. Yet through it all, the M1917A1 never faltered. Basilone, with movements honed by countless hours of practice, fed belt after belt into the weapon's action, his actions smooth and automatic, despite the utter pandemonium erupting around him. The ingenious water-cooled system had transformed the gun into an unwavering engine of destruction, functioning flawlessly irrespective of the sheer volume of rounds that tore through its barrel. Steam billowed from the water jacket like ethereal incense rising from some ancient mechanical altar, but the gun's intricate mechanism remained remarkably cool and precise. Smith found himself utterly captivated by the weapon's relentless, almost hypnotic efficiency. Each burst of fire endured for precisely the same duration. Each momentary pause required for a belt change consumed exactly the same predictable amount of time. Every minute correction of fire followed the same deliberate, methodical process. The gun, in that intense moment, had transcended mere machinery. It had become an almost living extension of Basilon's indomitable will, instantly responsive to his slightest adjustment, yet miraculously independent of human frailties such as fatigue or the debilitating buildup of heat. The relentless Japanese advance began to lose impetus as the ranks of their fallen combatants accumulated within the designated killing zone. The remaining enemy soldiers found themselves cornered, caught between the waterway behind them and the incessant barrage emanating from the M19-117A1 ahead. Attempts were made by some to circumvent the defensive setup by moving along the shoreline, but Basilone, with practiced precision, merely swept the weapon across the landscape, utilizing his pre-established aiming indicators to maintain accurate fire even in the profound darkness of the night. By daybreak, the sandbar was strewn with fallen combatants, a grim tally of nearly 800 Japanese soldiers who had been convinced their spiritual resolve would triumph over American military hardware. The M19-17A1 finally fell quiet, its water jacket retaining residual warmth, yet its mechanism poised for subsequent combat, should the need arise. In stark contrast, the surrounding, more modern M19-119s exhibited the severe marks of their intense heat trial, their barrels marred by thermal effects, some irreversibly distorted, beyond any hope of repair. We invite you to stay with us and watch the end of the video. We will be grateful for your like and subscription. Please leave a comment below about where you are from and what you think about the video topic. Captain Smith inspected his personnel as they serviced their armaments and tallied the spent ordnance. The numerical data unveiled a narrative that no pre-combat instruction manual had anticipated. The M19-117A1 had discharged upwards of 4,000 projectiles during the engagement without a solitary operational breakdown, its water cooling system ensuring unwavering efficacy throughout the entire battle. Conversely, the M19-19s had fired fewer rounds in total despite their theoretically higher cyclic rate, compelled to cease firing recurrently by overheating issues that generated critical vulnerabilities in the defensive screen. The strategic ramifications of these findings were profoundly impactful. In the context of jungle combat, where extreme humidity and elevated temperatures served as unrelenting antagonists, the venerable weapon's cooling system provided a pivotal superiority that contemporary advancements had unwittingly abandoned. The M19-19's air cooling mechanism functioned flawlessly in moderate climates, but faltered significantly in the stifling conditions of the South Pacific's oppressive environment. Ironically, the substantial mass and intricate design, the very factors that rendered the M19-17A1 seemingly antiquated, had revealed themselves as virtues when the mission demanded sustained, suppressive fire. Basilone stepped forth from his emplacement like a man roused from a deep reverie, his uniform drenched in perspiration and the vapor from the gun's steam vents. He had endured 6 hours of continuously loading ammunition strips into the firearms mechanism, making precise calibrations to preserve targeting precision as adversaries repositioned and advanced. The gun had, in essence, integrated with his being, its operational cadence mirroring his pulse, its requirements intuitively predicted prior to their manifestation. As the day advanced and the entire extent of their triumph unfolded, Smith felt his initial disbelief transforming into deep veneration. The museum pieces had unequivocally demonstrated their efficacy in the ultimate crucible, surpassing their contemporary counterparts in longevity and capability when it mattered most. The unforgiving jungle had revealed a fundamental truth that theoretical strategizing had overlooked. Sometimes the most venerable approach proved to be the most effective. The metamorphosis commenced in the hours following the Tenarue engagement, as reports of the M1917A1's prowess disseminated rapidly throughout the Marine Corps chain of command, like wildfire. Captain Smith found himself called before divisional command 3 days after the battle, where Major General Alexander Vandegrift waited with a pile of post-engagement evaluations and a pivotal question that would fundamentally alter operational doctrines across the Pacific theater. The commanding general's countenance bore the marks of exertion from the arduous defense of Henderson Field, but his eyes held an acute discernment that had preserved his forces through protracted, ferocious engagements. Vandegrift arranged the combat assessments upon his improvised workstation, indicating ordnance consumption statistics that unveiled a remarkable narrative. The M1917A1 positions had sustained uninterrupted suppressive activity for over 6 hours, expending upwards of 20,000 projectiles without a single operational breakdown. Meanwhile, positions equipped with M19Y19s had necessitated numerous barrel replacements and prolonged thermal recovery intervals that generated perilous lacuna in defensive coverage. The newer guns had delivered formidable volleys, but were incapable of enduring the protracted combat that jungle warfare demanded. Smith watched as Vandegrift followed the casualty counts with his digit, observing the highest concentration of fallen adversaries in front of the water-cooled emplacements. The M1917A1's steady rate of 600 rounds per minute had established killing zones that remained unwaveringly deadly throughout the engagement, while the M1919's higher cyclic rate had proven ineffectual when heat constraints necessitated frequent operational halts. The general's conclusion was unambiguous. The Corps had been misplacing emphasis on inappropriate criteria in its pursuit of contemporary upgrades. Within 48 hours, critical dispatches were relayed back to Marine Corps headquarters in Quantico, soliciting prompt reallocation of M19-117A1 machine guns to forward combat units. The weapon that had been assigned to instructional capacities and rear echelon protection suddenly became the highest priority commodity in the Pacific logistical network. Ordnance personnel hastily identified and dispatched cached armaments, while armorers labored ceaselessly to restore neglected firearms that had been accumulating grime in domestic storage depots. The engineering reassessment transcended mere ordnance expenditure tallies. Marine engineers performed comprehensive heat dissipation studies of both weapon systems in operational scenarios, gauging bore heat and determining thermal energy dispersion velocities within equatorial settings. Their conclusions corroborated the harsh first-hand ordeal that Basilone and his crew had endured and learned through brutal experience. Air cooling gradually diminished in efficacy as surrounding heat and moisture levels escalated. At Guadalcanal's characteristic 90-degree Fahrenheit and 90% relative humidity, the M1919's thermal regulation capability declined by almost 40% compared to moderate climates. Conversely, the M19-117A1's water-filled jacket sustained unwavering thermal management irrespective of environmental parameters. The system's inherent heat capacity assimilated thermal energy and transformed it into vapor, thus establishing a perpetual cooling process that operated autonomously of ambient air temperature or humidity. The mass disadvantage that rendered the armament seemingly antiquated was, in reality, reserved thermal management potential that yielded substantial benefits during prolonged combat. Captain Smith became an informal proponent for the venerable weapon, instructing recently deployed formations on insights gleaned from the Tenarue engagement. He emphasized that the M19-117A1 necessitated distinct operational methodologies compared to more contemporary firearms. Crews needed to conceptualize continuous suppressive activity instead of brief, intense volleys, and emplacement proved paramount since the armament's substantial mass impeded rapid relocation. However, when judiciously utilized, it could provide a level of suppressive capability that more portable armaments were simply incapable of replicating in the challenging jungle conditions. The confirmation of the M1917A1's battlefield efficacy extended far beyond isolated skirmishes, as subsequent military engagements consistently validated its pivotal role. During the sweeping October offensive, when General Harukichi Hyakutake committed his formidable 17th Army to a meticulously coordinated assault aimed at seizing Henderson Field, the emplacements housing the M1917A1 machine guns once again demonstrated their crucial importance. The Japanese command hurled wave after relentless wave of troops, regiment after regiment, against the staunch Marine lines, fully anticipating that American defenses would inevitably buckle and collapse under such unremitting pressure. Instead, their advancing forces were met with an unyielding torrent of machine gun fire that never diminished in intensity, never necessitated prolonged intermissions for cooling, and critically, never created the exploitable gaps or lulls in suppression that assault troops desperately sought to penetrate the defensive perimeter. Gunnery Sergeant Mitchell Page epitomized this innovative tactical methodology during the ferocious and brutal combat that unfolded on October 26th. When his isolated position came under a truly overwhelming and sustained attack, he skillfully leveraged the M19-A1's exceptional capability for continuous, sustained fire to single-handedly secure and defend a vital segment of the perimeter. While conventional lighter armaments would have compelled him to repeatedly cease fire for essential cooling periods, the robust, water-cooled design of the M1917A1 enabled him to maintain an unbroken barrage of suppressive fire, even when he found himself fighting entirely alone against a determined enemy. His eventual Medal of Honor citation would, in its specific commendation, explicitly highlight the weapon's unwavering reliability and dependable performance amidst such dire and extreme combat conditions. Stay with us and watch the end of the video. We will be grateful for your like and subscription. Write a comment about where you are from and what you think about the video topic. The ramifications for logistical planning and deployment resonated widely throughout the vast Pacific Theater. Commanders across various units began to specifically request M19-17A1s for their static defensive strongholds, while simultaneously preserving the more portable M1919s for dynamic mobile offensive operations. These heavier, water-cooled machine guns proved to be ideally suited for fixed fortifications, where their considerable mass posed no impediment, but rather contributed to their stability and sustained firing capability. Conversely, lighter weapons remained unequivocally better adapted for advancing forces that prioritized ease of movement and portability over the capacity for continuous, prolonged fire. This astute tactical distribution effectively maximized the inherent strengths of each weapon system, while simultaneously mitigating their respective weaknesses. Consequently, existing training protocols underwent a significant evolution to comprehensively accommodate the distinctive operational demands and unique requirements of the M1917A1. Specialized gunner schools placed a heightened emphasis on meticulous water management, diligently instructing crews on how to vigilantly monitor the coolant levels within the weapon's jacket and how to properly maintain the crucial steam vents under the intense pressures of combat. Detailed range cards gained even greater importance, primarily because the weapon's substantial weight rendered swift target acquisition a challenging endeavor. However, its enduring precision made careful pre-planned engagements devastatingly effective. Ammunition handling procedures were also adapted to efficiently manage the extended belt lengths that the water-cooled system was uniquely capable of accommodating. In this dynamic environment, Captain Smith found himself specifically tasked with the critical assignment of formulating new doctrine, a comprehensive set of operational principles that would incorporate the invaluable lessons gleaned from the fierce fighting on Guadalcanal. The detailed manual he subsequently produced meticulously highlighted environmental factors that had been entirely overlooked during conventional peacetime testing, specifically how atmospheric humidity adversely affected air cooling mechanisms, how actual sustained fire rates diverged significantly from theoretical cyclic rates, and how inherent thermal limitations could inadvertently create critical tactical vulnerabilities on the battlefield. This seminal document rapidly became mandatory study material for all machine gun crews operating across the vast expanse of the Pacific, effectively disseminating Guadalcanal's hard-won, often brutal knowledge to units that were confronting similar arduous conditions. Perhaps the most profound transformation was evident in the Marines themselves. Weapons that had once been perceived as onerous duties or undesirable assignments swiftly became coveted roles and prized positions, as word spread rapidly about their undeniable battlefield effectiveness. Veterans who had endured the brutal engagements at Tenarú and subsequent clashes spoke with a profound sense of reverence about these formidable guns, which had steadfastly continued to deliver fire when every other weapon around them had fallen silent. In the span of just a few desperate and critical nights, the M1917A1 had undergone a remarkable metamorphosis, evolving from what was widely considered an antiquated museum piece into an indispensable instrument of salvation and survival. By December 1942, as Australian forces arrived to relieve the battle-hardened Marines on Guadalcanal, the crucial insight gleaned from the campaign had solidified into official military doctrine. The oldest machine gun in American service had unequivocally demonstrated its superiority over its ostensibly modern replacement under specific, demanding combat conditions. This profound realization taught military planners a vital lesson. technological advancement did not invariably equate to tactical improvement. Sometimes the most effective tool for a given task was the one that appeared to be the most archaic, its worth confirmed not by theoretical specifications on paper, but by its undeniable, robust performance under the crucible of live fire. The remarkable resurrection of the M1917A1 represented far more than merely a redistribution of military equipment. It embodied a fundamental and transformative shift in how the Marine Corps approached the integration and adoption of technology. Novelty was not automatically synonymous with superiority if a new system could not reliably execute its designated mission. Weight was not perpetually an impediment if it provided crucial, indispensable capabilities. Complexity was not inherently preferable to straightforwardness if battlefield conditions favored robust, dependable functionality over sophisticated, intricate features. These profound lessons would continue to shape American small arms development for many decades into the future. The ultimate and most definitive justification of the M1917A1's enduring value reached its supreme manifestation on the desolate island of Iwo Jima, where John Basilone would carry the invaluable lessons acquired on Guadalcanal into his final, fateful battle. By February 1945, Gunnery Sergeant Basilone had ascended to become the Marine Corps' most celebrated machine gunner, his prestigious Medal of Honor citation expressly crediting the water-cooled weapon that had been instrumental in saving Henderson Field. However, his widespread fame had drawn him away from the perilous front lines, assigning him to stateside war bond tours where his heroic image could effectively galvanize civilian support for the ongoing Pacific Campaign. Basilone's eventual return to active combat duty came entirely at his own insistence. Despite numerous offers of safer assignments that would undoubtedly have ensured his survival throughout the duration of the war, he possessed a profound understanding that many rear echelon planners failed to grasp. The tactical revolution initiated by the M1917A1 remained incomplete without the presence of highly experienced gunners who possessed the innate ability to fully exploit its immense potential. While the weapon's dramatic resurrection had indeed provided the necessary hardware, true battlefield expertise remained largely concentrated in the seasoned veterans who had acquired its capabilities through desperate necessity and the harsh realities of combat, rather than through conventional peacetime training exercises. The Sulphur Island's stark, black volcanic sand presented an entirely new array of formidable challenges that rigorously tested every single lesson learned in the dense, humid jungles of Guadalcanal. In stark contrast to the coral beaches and luxuriant, dense vegetation of the Solomons, Iwo Jima offered scant inherent concealment or natural cover, and crucially, no indigenous water sources whatsoever for the M1917A1's essential cooling system. Japanese defenders had meticulously spent months preparing an intricate network of elaborate tunnel systems and heavily reinforced positions, designed to withstand prolonged and intense bombardment. This painstaking preparation effectively transformed the island into a brutal killing field, where every single yard of advance would be purchased at an agonizingly high cost in American blood. Captain Smith, now promoted and assigned the critical task of orchestrating machine gun employment across the entire 5th Marine Division, collaborated closely with Basilone to adapt the established water-cooled tactics for this radically different environment. The complete absence of natural water sources meant that crews would be compelled to carry substantial additional supplies of water or, as a desperate alternative, rely on saline ocean water, thereby mandating significant modifications to standard operating procedures. While the volcanic terrain paradoxically offered superb vantage points for engagement, it provided very little protection from the relentless Japanese artillery and mortar fire, which could target stationary positions with devastating and pinpoint accuracy. The profound expertise of Basilone proved indispensable during the intricate planning stages, as he meticulously identified strategic locations where the M19-117A1's formidable sustained fire capabilities could assert dominance over critical topographical features. While the weapon's substantial mass remained an impediment during swift forward movements, it paradoxically transformed into a significant asset when establishing robust defensive fortifications designed to repel fierce counterattacks. The combat doctrines employed by Japanese forces on Iwo Jima were heavily predicated upon nocturnal infiltration tactics and abrupt assaults launched from camouflaged positions. Precisely the kind of engagements where an unwavering torrent of firepower proved utterly pivotal. The initial landing on February 19th vividly illustrated the extent to which the Marine Corps had fully integrated the water-cooled weapon's tactical utility. M19-17A1s were brought ashore with the Vanguard waves, their dedicated crews having undergone specialized training in rapid emplacement techniques that enabled the establishment of formidable defensive perimeters within mere minutes of disembarkation. The gun's inherent capacity for continuous fire became paramount as Japanese defenders emerged from their concealed strongholds to fiercely contest every segment of the beach landing sites. Basilone's final, valiant engagement on February 21st served as a powerful testament to the M19-17A1's remarkable metamorphosis from an overlooked artifact to an indispensable combat instrument. Leading a specialized machine gun section towards Motoyama Airfield No. 1, he encountered a complex network of Japanese bunkers that strategically dominated the access routes to the crucial airstrip. This particular position demanded precisely the sustained suppressive fire, renowned from the fierce fighting on Guadalcanal, yet augmented with sophisticated tactical enhancements developed over 3 arduous years of Pacific combat. The engagement commenced at dawn as Basilone's section meticulously established their vantage points, overlooking the formidable Japanese redoubt. The M19-17A1s unleashed their coordinated bursts, their interlocking fields of fire weaving a dense barrage of projectiles that effectively stifled enemy movement between their entrenched defensive positions. In stark contrast to the desperate hand-to-hand combat witnessed at Tenaru, this particular confrontation necessitated precision fire at extended ranges, where the weapon's inherent accuracy proved just as valuable as its celebrated sustained fire capability. Japanese defenders swiftly countered with a barrage of mortar and artillery fire, necessitating frequent relocations and severely challenging the resilience of the gun crews to maintain continuous suppressive fire while under relentless bombardment. The considerable weight of the M19-17A1 made swift repositioning arduous, yet its advanced cooling system uniquely empowered crews to sustain fire rates that lighter weapon systems simply could not match. Basilone moved dynamically between positions, expertly coordinating both the fire output and the crucial ammunition resupply, all while directing the intricate tactical employment that had become his signature specialty. The tactical sophistication so vividly demonstrated at Iwo Jima represented the pinnacle of cumulative lessons learned throughout the entire Pacific campaign. Gun crews had perfected intricate water management techniques, ensuring optimal cooling efficiency even when forced to utilize saltwater substitutes. Ammunition handling procedures had progressed significantly to support belt lengths exceeding 1,000 rounds, thereby enabling sustained fire that could endure for hours without interruption. Furthermore, range estimation and target acquisition had evolved into precise sciences, meticulously optimizing the weapon's inherent accuracy. We encourage you to stay with us and watch the end of the video. We will be grateful for your like and subscription. Please share in the comments where you are from and what you think about the video topic. More importantly, the M19-117A1 had ultimately discovered its optimal strategic role within the Marine Corps' integrated combat philosophy. Rather than attempting to force the weapon into unsuitable roles, such as a lightweight portable gun designed for rapid advances, Marines had astutely learned to deploy it where its intrinsic strengths afforded peak efficacy. Fixed defensive positions, prolonged suppressive fire missions, and precise long-range engagements had unequivocally become the water-cooled gun's primary domains of expertise. The weapon's profound psychological influence on adversary formations had also emerged as a significant consideration in tactical planning. Japanese troops had grown to dread the unmistakable roar of sustained M1917A1 fire, perceiving it as an enduring menace that would neither abate with time nor diminish with rising temperatures. The gun's capacity to maintain continuous fire established a formidable psychological barrier that powerfully augmented its physical effects, compelling enemy units to remain in concealment rather than attempting movement under fire. Basilone's tragic demise during the Iwo Jima assault signified the close of a significant period, yet his strategic heritage persisted vibrantly within the doctrine he had helped co-create. The M1917A1 continued its invaluable service throughout the remainder of the Pacific campaign. Its position firmly established as commanders finally grasped the critical distinction between advanced engineering and practical combat efficacy. The weapon that had seemed antiquated in 1941 had undeniably transformed into an essential asset by 1945. The wider ramifications of this experience reached beyond the scope of individual weapon systems, profoundly molding American military thinking concerning the integration of new armaments. The M19-117A1's revitalization illustrated unequivocally that battlefield requirements often diverged significantly from peacetime specifications, that environmental factors could supersede theoretical advantages, and that the invaluable experience of combat veterans provided insights that controlled laboratory testing simply could not duplicate. These critical lessons would fundamentally reconfigure how the military evaluated new equipment, henceforth prioritizing real-world performance over abstract functionalities. By the cessation of hostilities, the M19-117A1 had accomplished an extraordinary feat. It had successfully asserted its continued utility against newer technology by demonstrating unrivaled efficacy in specific operational conditions. The weapon's considerable weight and inherent complexity, originally perceived as drawbacks, had ultimately proven to be crucial attributes that facilitated functionalities lighter weapons simply could not match. Water cooling had unequivocally prevailed against air cooling in environments where sustained fire mattered significantly more than sheer portability. The tactical revolution ignited by Guadalcanal's desperate fighting had fundamentally revolutionized the Marine Corps' perspective on firepower, endurance, and situational responsiveness. An antiquated armament had thus imparted contemporary insights about the intricate relationship between technology and tactics, proving that sometimes the most effective solution was indeed the oldest one, meticulously honed through practical application and corroborated by tangible outcomes rather than mere theoretical specifications. The concluding chapter of the M1917A1's Pacific War saga began with a profound quiet, the kind of deep stillness that invariably follows the cessation of prolonged hostilities. Captain Smith stood amidst the shattered remnants of what had once been Shuri Castle on Okinawa, observing his Marines diligently cleaning their weapons for what many fervently hoped would be the very last time. The water-cooled machine guns remained in their emplaced positions like silent guardians bearing the weight of countless battles, their thermal casings still retaining residual heat from the final engagement that had successfully dismantled Japanese opposition on the island's southern approaches. The empirical data gleaned from the Okinawa campaign narrated a tale that would have seemed unimaginable 3 years earlier at Guadalcanal. M1917A1 positions had sustained an average operational readiness of 96% during prolonged engagements, a stark contrast to the 72% achieved by air-cooled weapons under similar conditions. This significant difference equated to thousands of additional rounds that successfully reached their intended targets, instead of waiting in thermal-stressed mechanisms. It represented firepower that had demonstrated instrumental effectiveness in breaching Japanese defensive positions that had endured protracted shelling for weeks. Major Smith found himself profoundly contemplating the profound transformation he had observed. Initially, he harbored considerable skepticism regarding the efficacy of what he considered outdated equipment. Yet, through the unforgiving crucible of intense combat, he had evolved into one of the M1917A1 machine gun's most ardent proponents within the Marine Corps. This venerable weapon had truly transitioned from being perceived as a cumbersome liability to an indispensable asset, a veritable blessing in the heat of battle. Its inherent limitations, once deemed drawbacks, gradually revealed themselves as distinct advantages when properly comprehended and strategically deployed. For instance, the very substantial weight that rendered it cumbersome to reposition on the battlefield simultaneously furnished the critical thermal mass essential for its sustained cooling during prolonged firing. Similarly, the mechanical intricacy that necessitated more meticulous maintenance also bestowed upon it a level of operational reliability that simpler, less complex systems simply could not replicate. The weapon's psychological impact on enemy forces became as profoundly significant as its destructive physical capabilities throughout the arduous and extended fighting on Okinawa. Japanese defenders, through bitter experience, had learned to distinctly differentiate the M1917A1's unique firing signature from those of other American armaments, swiftly recognizing its characteristic sound as an undeniable harbinger of doom for any movement detected within its lethal beaten zone. The gun's unparalleled capacity to maintain a relentless barrage for hours without interruption compelled enemy units to retreat even deeper into their subterranean defenses, severely curtailing their ability to orchestrate cohesive defensive strategies or mount effective counterattacks. More consequentially still, the M1917A1's unexpected triumph fundamentally reshaped the American military's conceptual approach to sustained combat operations. This weapon unequivocally demonstrated that the sheer sustainability of firepower held greater strategic importance than mere peak performance in protracted engagements, that meticulous thermal management was every bit as crucial as a continuous ammunition supply, and that prevailing environmental factors could often supersede theoretical advantages. These invaluable lessons, gleaned from the battlefield, possessed ramifications extending far beyond the specific employment of machine guns, ultimately influencing a vast array of military doctrines, from artillery tactics to the intricate design of aircraft engines. The series of technical advancements ignited by this weapon's unexpected renaissance continued to evolve and improve throughout the extensive Pacific Campaign. Diligent ordnance specialists successfully engineered enhanced water circulation systems, which remarkably boosted cooling efficiency by a notable 15%. This critical improvement permitted even higher sustained rates of fire without the perennial risk of overheating. Concurrently, the ammunition feeding mechanisms underwent meticulous refinement, adapting to accommodate substantially longer belt lengths, thereby significantly reducing the frequency of reloads during the most pivotal and intense engagements. Furthermore, the optical sights were systematically upgraded to fully exploit the weapon's inherent precision and accuracy at extended operational ranges. However, it was widely acknowledged that the most pivotal transformations were predominantly tactical rather than purely technical. Marine Corps doctrine, in a significant shift, now formally acknowledged the M19-117A1 as a highly specialized instrument, meticulously optimized for distinct missions, rather than a versatile general-purpose weapon attempting to fulfill every role. Its recognized specialties unequivocally became fixed defensive positions, the provision of sustained suppressive fire, and precise engagement at extended distances. This newfound tactical clarity effectively dissipated much of the initial ambiguity and confusion that had plagued the weapon's deployment in earlier stages of the conflict. Stay with us and watch the end of the video. We will be grateful for your like and subscription. Comment. I'm from Canada, and this video topic about the M19-117A1's unexpected resurgence in combat and the lessons learned about military innovation and the true value of obsolete equipment is absolutely fascinating. It really underscores how battlefield experience can completely upend theoretical assumptions. The profound human cost exacted by this harsh, on-the-job education was immeasurable. Valiant veterans, such as the legendary Basilone, ultimately sacrificed their very lives to cultivate the specialized expertise that rendered the weapon's effective deployment a tangible reality. Countless machine gun crews, often young and inexperienced, were compelled to learn through a grueling process of trial and error. Their costly mistakes tragically quantified, not in mere training scores, but in the grim tally of casualties. This vital knowledge, indispensable for survival and success, was literally purchased with the spilled blood of brave men and rigorously validated through the stark reality of combat survival, thereby forging a profound body of tactical wisdom that no amount of peacetime exercise or theoretical training could ever hope to replicate. Smith's meticulously compiled after-action reports from the brutal fighting on Okinawa were destined to serve as the bedrock for post-war machine gun doctrine, systematically codifying the invaluable lessons painfully acquired over 3 arduous years of combat across the vast Pacific theater. His incisive analysis particularly underscored the critical importance of environmental factors, aspects that had been largely overlooked or underestimated in pre-war strategic planning. These included detailed observations on how high humidity adversely affected cooling efficiency, how the demands of sustained fire significantly diverged from the capabilities of burst fire, and how intrinsic thermal limitations could inadvertently create tactical vulnerabilities that shrewd enemies were quick to exploit. This seminal document would exert a profound and lasting influence on American small arms development for many decades subsequent to the war. The broader implications of these findings extended significantly beyond individual weapon systems, touching upon fundamental questions concerning military innovation and the practical adoption of new technologies. The M1917A1's unexpected triumph definitively demonstrated that newer equipment was not inherently superior, that the often brutal requirements of the battlefield frequently diverged sharply from pristine laboratory specifications, and that the invaluable experience accumulated by combat veterans provided profound insights that purely theoretical analysis could simply not replicate. These crucial lessons would fundamentally reshape the military's entire approach to evaluating new equipment, placing a paramount emphasis on proven performance in real-world conditions over mere promised capabilities. As the devastating Pacific War inexorably approached its conclusion, the M1917A1 found itself in a truly anomalous position. An ostensibly obsolete weapon that had, against all expectations, proven demonstrably superior to its more modern replacements under specific and critical combat conditions. The specialized tactical niche it had painstakingly carved out during the savage jungle fighting of Guadalcanal had progressively expanded throughout the arduous island-hopping campaign, consistently providing indispensable capabilities that lighter, more modern weapons simply could not match when missions unequivocally demanded sustained firepower over extended operational periods. The weapon's burgeoning influence on post-war strategic planning was already becoming strikingly apparent as astute military planners meticulously prepared for potential future conflicts in other tropical environments across the globe. While Korea's rugged mountainous terrain and notoriously harsh winters would undoubtedly present a different set of formidable challenges, the profound lessons learned in the Pacific regarding environmental factors and the critical importance of sustained operations would prove remarkably relevant in wholly unexpected ways. The M1917A1's remarkable renaissance had established enduring principles that transcended the specific characteristics of any individual weapon system. The ultimate irony, perhaps, was the most profound of all. John Moses Browning's foundational design philosophy, which steadfastly emphasized unwavering reliability and robust sustainability over ephemeral theoretical performance, had proven demonstrably more pertinent and vital in 1945 than it had in 1917, the year the gun was originally conceived and produced. The intervening decades had, regrettably, led the military to often overvalue complexity and sophisticated engineering, but the harsh reality of combat had unequivocally revealed the enduring, fundamental importance of core engineering principles that rigorously prioritized functional efficacy over fleeting fashion. Smith's poignant final entry in his personal log eloquently encapsulated the very essence of the profound lessons the M1917A1 had imparted to both him personally and the entire Marine Corps. The weapon had achieved its remarkable success not by excelling universally at every conceivable task, but rather by being uniquely and perfectly suited to a very specific set of critical missions that ultimately proved instrumental to achieving victory. Its unexpected renaissance had conclusively demonstrated that true military effectiveness stemmed from the intelligent and judicious matching of the right tools to the right tasks, rather than operating under the naive assumption that newer technology would automatically yield superior results. This invaluable lesson extended far beyond the realm of machine guns, encompassing the entire intricate relationship between technological advancement and tactical deployment in the complex landscape of modern warfare. The M1917A1's ultimate vindication had unequivocally shown that combat would forever remain the final and most authoritative arbiter of true military effectiveness, that the demanding requirements of the battlefield frequently contradicted complacent peacetime assumptions, and that the most crucial innovations sometimes involved the sagacious rediscovery of proven old solutions rather than the relentless pursuit of entirely new ones. In a war profoundly defined by relentless technological advancement, an ostensibly obsolete weapon had, paradoxically, taught the most modern and enduring lesson of all. That ultimate success derived from a clear and pragmatic understanding of what genuinely worked rather than what theoretically should work.